Good afternoon, you're watching Context. I'm Katie Wilson. Protests have continued into a fourth day across pockets of Los Angeles, triggered by immigration enforcement operations in parts of the city on Friday. As some protests turned violent, US President Donald Trump deployed 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines to the Los Angeles area to help the federal response to the protests and uphold what he calls very strong law and order in parts of the city. This prompted California Governor Gavin Newsom to call the move illegal and immoral. It's highly unusual for US military troops to be involved in domestic law enforcement, and Governor Newsom, who has taken the Trump administration to court for deploying National Guard troops without his authorization, is now threatening to do the same over the deployment of US Marines. Immigration raids have stepped up after Trump returned to the White House and pledged to crack down on illegal immigration. Rubber bullets, stun grenades and other non-lethal weapons have been used against the protesters. Protests against immigration raids and mass deportations have also started in other cities across the US, with marches in Tampa, Boston and Houston. Joining me now to discuss the latest developments and what they could mean for Los Angeles is political analyst Enrique Casero. Thank you for being with us. So, Enrique, I'd like to start off with you. Talk me through why these protests are so controversial and why the response to them is controversial too.
I mean, this is sort of perfect storm. Donald Trump releases an order to command the control of immigrations and to put the migrants on the border. And during that period, during that process, you have to keep the migrants and the detainees on federal facilities, which is they are in charge not of the state of California, they're in charge of the US federal government, right? So having doing this, you get the protesters on the streets. I'm not gonna say making riots, not at that moment, but obviously protesting and starting sort of a dire, some sort of defiant attitude towards the federal government and by name, by elevation, Donald Trump and his policies. So those riots, those protests becoming riots, that riots, they have to be controlled by the local police, LA police, as we know, and we saw. Well, I didn't saw it because I was even born. But in Chicago, '68, during the Democrats' convention, whatever that happening there in Chicago those days was controlled by the police. It's not a good example about how to control a riot, but it's an example of how the local government or the local administration has to control the process and has to control the riots. But this is Donald Trump. From the federal government, and you got Gavin Newsom, who's the California governor, and a very strong Democrat, and a very, I want to say, a very clear head for the 2028 election for the Democratic Party. So it's, as I say, this is the perfect storm coming together in one place, which is right now LA. As much as the protesters make the protest becoming a riot, they're giving more and more justification to Donald Trump in order to act. One of the things that the state got is the National Guard. The National Guard can be federalized. It has been federalized. And Donald Trump saying, okay, 5,000 men of the National Guard are not enough. I have to protect the federal buildings with 700. Yesterday was 500, 700 Marines, and they're going to deploy 700 Marines along these days. So, as I said, I want to insist on this. It's the perfect storm. It's not just a question of protesting or a question of riots. It's a question of political struggle, or even more political clash.
So let's roll back a little bit. Tell me about what led to these protests, because raids like this, they've been stepping up ever since Trump returned to the White House, haven't they?
Yeah, but this started with a very hardline promise in order to reach the presidency of Donald Trump in terms of controlling illegal immigration. It didn't happen. It happened. It's happening in California because of his symbolic character of a damn hard democratic state. It's not happening in Arizona, which has democratic governor. It's not happening in New Mexico, which has a democratic governor, and forget about happening in Texas, because in Texas there is a Republican governor. But those 4 states are tough on they're living a huge pressure of immigration, and people just jumping over the border or the wall or whatever the figure you want to use in here. So it's California is more, as I said, it's more symbolic. It's more representative of whatever the struggle or the clash between Dems or Republicans is going on. So this becomes, from the electoral campaign, from the presidential campaign, a hard promise from Donald Trump in order to control illegal immigration, and it's taking this path. I really don't think that this was first Donald Trump's plan. But
Enrique, on that note, do you think these protests will have shaken Trump's core supporters? Because as you say, this is a democratic state, but these Republican states aren't necessarily seeing these protests. So what will this mean for Trump's presidency? It's very early days, but his core supporters.
In some way, I think that this is calling the Republican base outside California. I mean, California is not a state in which a Republican candidate can win on a presidential. The last Republican governor was Arnold Schwarzenegger, and we're gonna spend some time waiting for a Republican governor or a Republican California in a presidential election. So this is not appealing for the Republican Californians, and yet it could be, but this isn't appealing for the huge scope of Republican voters all along the United States, saying, okay, this is California. I know you don't like California. I know you don't love California, because California is not really loved. It's sort of New York. And this is California. This is the place you hate. This is the place that is telling you, it has been telling you for the last 10 years what has to be canceled, what has to be allowed, what has to be avoided, which language you have to use. Everything is coming here. That identification is a very hard line for lots of Americans, especially Republicans. And as I said, California is a symbol.
Mm-hmm. And
so in that symbol, in that very symbol is taking place this struggle.
And Enrique, give us a sense of the scale of these protests that are taking place. Do you think the response of Trump warrants such a reaction?
It's a tough question, because one of the things I think Trump lacks of is a plan. I mean, I think he is just going with the wave. If this works, I'm gonna go along this wave. If it doesn't work, I'm gonna change. Either way, I'm gonna say I'm a great negotiator and I'm a peacemaker. I'm saying peacemaker sort of in advance, in order to anticipate what he's gonna say after the riots get calmed, right? But he's gonna move along the way in order trying to see what opportunities are in front of him in enacting just in reaction of whatever those opportunities the reality is given to them. So I don't really think there is a plan. I think that something has been switched on, and then, okay, let's gonna act and let's gonna see how far we can get.
But sending in Marines, that's a significant escalation, isn't it? It's something that's unusual for domestic law enforcement.
As I said before, just for federalizing the National Guard of California is a huge step itself. I mean, 700 Marines on the ground, 700 boots on the ground is just another piece of the symbolic clash he wants to confront. Those kind of riots have to be solved by and have to be managed by the local police. No more than that. Usually, it doesn't happen.
And the Los Angeles mayor's has spoken out about a sense of fear across the city. Do you think there's a danger of further escalation? And what does this mean for LA residents?
I don't want to be. I wouldn't want to be in LA right now. Probably the things are gonna get really, really ugly and really, really tough for LA residents. Probably those riots are right now are concentrated, focused on happening close to federal facilities and federal buildings. That's the excuse, indeed, that Donald Trump has said in order to deploy those 700 Marines, they have to protect federal buildings. So we know that the riots are very localized, but we've seen this many times, sadly many times in riots in which all the people are spreading all along the city, which is not a little city, not at all. It's not. This is not Edinburgh, which is a very small city. No. This is LA is huge. It goes through the coast and it goes through the interior of the land, and we don't know. But those, if you can't control these things soon, the things can get very ugly in no time.
And we've seen that during these raids, the ICE agents, they were masked during the raids, which sparked the protests. Is having these agents cover their faces, is that a matter of protecting their identities, or could it be an intimidation tactic?
I don't think it's either. I think it's just a part of the process. The ICE is coming. That's a very funny sentence. The ICE agency is taking place and is making its duty in LA, just fulfilling Donald Trump's order. And with the ICA, it started everything. But right now, the ICA has been completely overwhelmed in attributions and in delegation of power in order to control and to do everything by the National Guard and by the United States Marine Corps. So the ICE probably could be just an agency that has to be put on the backward, put on the last line of the offense, or on the protection, the last line, because there is no work to do right now. Right now, the main work, the main job, the main task is to control the riots. So the ICE right now is sort of, okay, let's gonna wait and see what is going on, and afterwards maybe we can start over all over our job.
And what widening, what this means, what does this mean for democracy in the United States, given that this has been the response to protests that were largely peaceful?
It's tough to say, because the same example I placed before on the interview, Chicago in 1968, it was the hippie movement, tried to be a very peaceful protests, and everything got out of control really, really fast. So, and we've seen these riots over and over again for police violence or any sort of completely criminal assassination of a citizen, and it's not new. But here from Europe, we can see this sequence of events very, very scary, and I think it's scary too for the United States citizens and of course all the citizens in California.
Thank you so much for your insights and for joining us on the programme. Well, that brings this edition of Context to a close. Dozens of people have been arrested in Los Angeles after days of violent protests, which erupted following immigration raids. People began gathering after federal immigration officers arrested large groups of unauthorised immigrants in areas with large Latino populations. While the demonstrations started out as peaceful, 5 vehicles were set on fire, protesters shut down a major freeway, and there were reports of looting. In response, President Trump deployed 2,000 National Guard troops to the city, triggering outrage from Democrats. Then, on Monday, he ordered another 2,000 troops and 700 Marines to deploy to the city too. We'll keep bringing you the latest developments here on Context. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.